Today I'm going to be recommending a team for you in career mode from every single league on FIFA. I'm going to be starting with Argentina, going all the way through Australia, all the way to Turkey, and finally going to the United States. Every single league has at least one fun team, so hopefully I can find one that you like, no matter where you fancy playing. Anyway, let's get started straight away with our first nation, which of course is Argentina. So if we have a look at some of the teams in the Argentinian league, you can see some massive names. The first one we'll come across is Boca Juniors. They're not going to be my choice, but they are by far the best and most successful team in Argentina. In a minute, we'll come across my favorite choice. Here it is, Independiente. They've managed to win the Argentinian First Division 16 times, as you can see at the start, but they do have some really fun expectations. They want you to win the league in the first season, they want you to do well in the South American competitions, but more importantly, they need you to make money, which is a big part of playing in South America. They've got Real Stadium as well, they've got a good transfer budget, so I can't look past Independiente as my favourite Argentinian career mode save. Next up is Australia, and there's a lot of similarities between all the teams in this league. You can see they all have very similar transfer budgets of between £2 and £6 million, which is probably about right for the level of squads they're at. They're comparative to something like a League One team. And the team we're actually going to suggest is Wellington Phoenix. I think they're super interesting. Of course, Wellington is a city in New Zealand, so you're playing as a New Zealand team based in Australia. This means you can go for youth academy players from New Zealand, you can take over the New Zealand national team, you can do a lot of interesting stuff with Wellington Phoenix while also having a cup competition that you can qualify for in the Asian Champions League. Super fun, they've got nice kits, and they're in a cool location, and that's why I recommend Wellington Phoenix. Next up is Austria, and you've got another quite a few good choices here. You've got Austria Vienna, who you can see how successful they've been in the past, although not very recently. You've got people like RB Salzburg, who ever since were bought by Red Bull have been the go-to team. We've got a few other teams. You've got this team that's managed by Miroslav Klose, SCRA. Let's have a look at some of the other teams in here. That's pretty much it. I'm going to recommend you take over Austria Vienna. I love their purple kits. They don't even have sponsors on FIFA, which I think is pretty cool as well. They've got a nice transfer budget. They've got fairly even board expectations. You can see they're all at level 3, which is pretty easy to succeed with. You can add your own restrictions. You can do youth academy only. You can do club or country. Austria is a really fun league, and I really do recommend you play as Austria Vienna. Next up, we have Belgium. You've probably heard me talk about Belgium in the past because they have a very unique sort of league style. I'm not sure if it's fully represented on FIFA, but again, they've got a ton of big name teams. One of their biggest teams, of course, in the Belgian league is Anderlecht. And not only do they have, again, an interesting purple kit and a nice amount of transfer budget, they are also the most successful team in Belgium, but they haven't been recently. There's been a couple of other teams that have managed to usurp them, take their crown, and that's why I'm going to recommend you maybe try and get Antwerp up to glory again. There's a couple of other interesting teams. RFC Sarang here, they have the worst board expectations. They're 5 for everything. No team on the game has lower board expectations than these, so if you want a really easy save, maybe they could be the one you go for. Next up, we have China, and I've spoken about some of these Chinese teams in the past. You can see you've got some teams that are half a star, including Hebei FC. Founded in 2010, this team is now basically bankrupt. They've got a squad full of players who are rated around 50, and yeah, you can imagine the difficulty when you play one of the better teams, because you do have some teams like Shandong here who are still 3 stars. If you're playing on a high difficulty for your AI, you are really going to struggle while playing as someone like Hebei. They have cool kits as well, and they did actually have some pretty interesting players in the past, so maybe see if you can rebuild them and bring some of them back to China. Next up, we have Denmark, and there's always been a team in Denmark that I recommend above all the others. It's because I used to really like their kits, but Lyngby FC are an interesting choice. You can see here they have a high amount of demand or high amount of expectation for both financial development and youth development. That means you're going to be focused on bringing through a ton of youth players and selling them on. The whole time you're going to be trying to overtake some of the better clubs in Denmark, like Midtjylland right here or Copenhagen, who are both 3.5 stars. Starting as a team that's only 1.5 stars, you're going to have a pretty tough time. You've not got too much transfer budget to buy the youth scouts with in the first place. And I really do recommend you give this a go if you want to play a European build up a club save. Next up we have England, so of course we've got 4 different divisions we can look for teams from. Because I've just recommended a Road to Glory, I'm probably not going to recommend a team in League 2 or League 1, so instead I'm going to choose a team from the Championship, and I'm going to choose Sunderland. You can see they've got a bit of information there at the top, but they've also got a real stadium in the game. So if you've watched Sunderland Till You Die or Sunderland Till I Die on Netflix, you'll know a lot about this club. They fell from grace. They were a regular Premier League team until only a couple of years ago. They fell all the way down to the 3rd division, but they're on their way back up right now with a pretty exciting squad. If you can keep some of their star young players, then I think Sunderland really could be a top save if you're interested in playing in England. Next up we have France, and again I'm probably not going to recommend a team from the lower leagues, although could be a very good option right here. They nearly did go down to the 3rd division, but they are currently playing in the 2nd division. Instead I'm going to recommend you play as FC Lorient. I did do a full explanation of why in one of my long save videos that I made a couple of weeks ago, but basically they started off the league really well. They're from a small area in Brittany. You can see the Brittany influence on their badge, and they have a ton of interesting teams just in Brittany. So maybe you could try and do a save where you only sign players from that area of France. There's a couple of really big names out there, and I'm sure you can find a Wikipedia article that mentions more. So maybe try and do a save like that. A Brittany to glory could be very interesting on FIFA 23. Next up is Germany. So again, we have a bunch of different leagues to look at. We've got 1860 Munich, they would be a really good choice in the 3rd division. We've got teams in the 2nd division like Kaiserslautern who have, they managed to get promoted from the 2nd division to the 1st division and win it only about 25 years ago. But we're actually going to go to the Bundesliga, and I'm going to recommend you take over Hertha Berlin. With the amount of money, and you can see this in their transfer budget right there and their club worth that Hertha Berlin have, they really should have done a lot better recently than they have in real life. Hertha Berlin have their real stadium in the ground. The Olympiastadion is one of the biggest in Germany, if not the biggest, I'm not 100% sure. But they have a really interesting team. They've got a ton of money, and you can just fully rebuild a capital city club to be basically exactly what you want. So I do recommend you give Hertha Berlin a go. Have a look on Wikipedia and see why they failed, because a lot of it is due to poor investment and poor spending, some things that of course you won't be able to do if you want to try and succeed on FIFA career mode. Next up is India, and this is probably the lowest rated league on the game. Between India and Ireland, I'm not sure which one is officially the worst. You can see again, you've got teams with half a star, you've got teams that are 1 star, I think there's even one that's 1.5 stars somewhere, although apparently they're not in the game anymore. But we have a couple of teams, most of them are fairly young, except for East Bengal. You can see this team is nearly 103 years old. East Bengal is an interesting team. They've got continental success, which is always a good sign of them playing in the Asian Champions League. They've also got nice kits, if you look at the bottom there. The red and the yellow is a pretty cool combination. Based in Kolkata, which is a huge city in India, they have 8 domestic cups, so maybe try and get to 10 before leaving for a more reputable league. I've not tried India myself, so if you do give this a go, let me know how fun it is, and maybe I'll have to head to India in my next save. Next up is Italy, so we've got a 2nd division yet again. Thankfully they've added this to FIFA 23. If we look at some of the teams, I think Como is probably the most interesting one that I haven't mentioned too much in the past. So they've got Cesc Fabregas, they've got Dennis Wise as their CEO, they've got Baselli in midfield as well, who's another really good old FIFA career mode hero. So I'm going to say give Como a go. Have a look at their Netflix documentary, or it might not be on Netflix in your country, but have a look at their documentary, read up on why Como is such an interesting club. Based in Lake Como as well, one of the best areas of Italy. They have a nice transfer budget compared to some of the other teams in the league. You can see teams like Genoa have about 3 to 4 times the transfer budget, but some of the other teams that got promoted, teams like Südtirol for example, it's not too much different. So I would definitely recommend you give Como a go. Next up is the Netherlands, and I'm going to recommend you give Feyenoord your save. They've got very good, interesting young players. They've got a traditional kit, right? You see there, the red and white is It's iconic around Europe. They got 16 million transfer budget. They do like to focus on their youth development. So your goal is going to be to try and make a youth team that's as good as Ajax is with Feyenoord. It shouldn't take you too long, and maybe you can add to their 15 championships and their 13 domestic trophies. If you post about your Feyenoord career mode on my Discord, I can guarantee you'll have some new fans. So before we go on to Norway, which will be in the next episode, please do consider subscribing and like the video if you got any good suggestions from today's clips. So thank you all for watching. I'll see you soon for another video. Subscribe for more, like the video, and I'll see you soon. Thank you very much, and goodbye.